Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community. We were running A-class lightweight cars. Every vehicle in this races were under £2,000. Our first race was at the Silverstone GP circuit, and while through the first few turns everything went all relatively smoothly, which is not always the case when it comes to Silverstone, things would go dramatically wrong through turn 3 as the Silverstone gets things very sideways. An almighty lag spike would fire all manner of cars off the track. At least 5 or 6 vehicles were just destroyed in that particular one, while the Silverstone at the front here was still fighting with an MX-5 into the braking zone. The Mazda manages to keep his car on the inside, and then we'll run wide through the next part. The Silverstone is still looking, finally gets the cutback on the exit of the corner. The Mazda gets a bit of a slide, has to end up out a little bit wide. Now a Beetle is coming through on the inside as the Mazda was just a little bit out of position. That's all it takes. Just a bit out of position through one corner, and it kind of messes you up further down the road. Now, with this being about lightweight cars, there are a number of racing vehicles. The Formula E was in here. It could get into A-class. The F2000 vehicle could get into was in A-class as well. Of course, the downside with these vehicles is their very much lack of straight line speed, while through the turns they are incredibly good, as this one here goes sideways around the outside of a Jaguar D-Type. When it came to the straights, they were in trouble. And the straights at Silverstone are relatively long, so when this F2000 led this group onto the straight, the Jaguar's gone. It's just absolutely vanished, and there goes the Datsun as well. Even the Caterham is coming up alongside the F2000 car. Of course, when they get to a corner, though, the F2000 and similarly the Formula E and so on were very, very quick through the turns. It all came down to, sort of which car you choose. Did you go for something with a little bit more straight line speed, or go to maximise your speed actually through the turns at the front? And a Mazda RX-3 was battling with a Volkswagen Beetle, but this race was to claim 2 more victims as the Mazda clipped the curb on the inside, and that's all it took. Gave a tiny bump to the Beetle that put the Beetle out wide, and then the Mazda couldn't stop his car in time, and that's another vehicle out. That's it was a huge rate of attrition in this particular race. Yeah, a lot of cars going out early on in this one. And there wasn't, in all honesty, a huge amount of close racing because of that. The F2000 car fought with the Datsun for a little while. Of course, when you have the car that has no straight line speed, overtaking, you tend to have to be a lot braver with your overtaking. You're never going to outbrake something because you're never close enough to try anything into the braking zones. You have to either hope that they make a mistake like the Datsun did by running a little bit wide, or you will have to get brave, probably going around the outside of somebody. In this case, the F2000 could capitalise on the Datsun's little mistake, but they've still got a very long straight to go. The F2000 has to really get everything right through Maggots and Beckett's here and coming onto the straight, because this is even though you can see how far away the F2000 is already, it's just so slow in a straight line compared to these other cars. The Datsun is up alongside by the time they get to the braking zone. It closed all of that gap down that straight. Fortunately, though, for the Mazda, it is far enough ahead so that by the time they get to the corner, the Datsun can't quite outbrake him. And now he's sort of broken that cycle of the straight line speed car getting past you on the straights and then you're getting past it on the corners. He's been far enough ahead to get away from the Datsun on the straights, and now that makes it very difficult for the Datsun to find a way past, as it's now just going to be too far back to try anything. Again, not a huge amount happened for the majority of the race. Third place was going to change hands, though. The MX-5 that was in third came under pressure from the Volkswagen Beetle. I think the Beetle had a little bit of damage. The Beetle managing to get up the inside. Now, the Volkswagen was very much a speed car. Certainly when it suffers a bit of damage, it was very much a speed car. The handling wasn't quite there, and the Mazda capitalises by getting to the inside. Still, the Beetle fights back as they come up towards Maggots and Beckett's, but this is a scary place to go too wide into, and sure enough, the Beetle drops back a little bit. He knows his best opportunity is to get past the Mazda when it comes to the straight. The MX-5 isn't slow. I mean, A lot of these cars here are not particularly slow in a straight line, being sort of all lightweights. These tend to be some of the faster cars that you can get in A-class. Sure enough, the Beetle does go to the inside, but it doesn't breeze past the MX-5 as I might have expected it to. The Mazda is not giving up without a fight, cutting back to the inside, and it probably would have worked had he not got a really big slide midway through the corner. A little bit of a shame that with that slide, yeah, it could well have worked. Keeping the position, tries to get up the inside at the final turn, but can't quite do it. It's on too shallow a line, and the Beetle is now out of range. But yeah, that's probably the most exciting battle on track for the entire race. And the front in it was two Sagaruses that led the way. At one point they did get very, very close together, but there was never a change of position between the pair of them. And as they came on the final lap, the purple car, or the typical TVR colours, was to take victory. It wasn't a hugely comfortable victory from second place that you can see just in the background as they both ran wide on the final turn, while the Beetle would get third. And I think only 9 or 10 cars finished this race. There was quite a lot of broken cars. Yeah, quite a lot of cars were unfortunate in that one. Our second race, and we would go to the Catalunya National Circuit. I was one of the ones killed in the first race. My Shelby Cobra, the paint job didn't load for whatever reason. I don't know, Forza being funny. My Shelby Cobra from the back row got a very, very good start. As we come into turn one, all sorts of shenanigans are going on the outside. And ahead of us, there's a bump between a Lotus and something else. Not quite sure what that tangled with. And I came from 16th on the grid to third in 3 corners. The Sagarus in front of me came from, I think, 14th on the grid to second. We made huge ground on that one by just keeping to the inside of turn one and staying out of trouble and having very, very fast launching cars. We stayed out of the trouble on lap 1 this time, and yeah, amazingly I found myself in third, coming under a little bit of pressure from another Sagaris, but this Cobra has such large rear tyres that the traction out of the turns is its real strong point, and sure enough, I can simply out-drag the Sagaris up towards the next corner. At the front, and it was a Caterham that led the early laps, but it wouldn't be long before our little group of cars would catch up. I'd make a mistake somewhere and drop to the back of this train. The Caterham, while very quick through the corners, had absolutely no straight line speed. I don't think the car had damage, I'm not sure. It might just be the way it's built, but there was none of the straight line speed. The Sagaris breezes up behind it and is long gone before they ever get to the braking zone. The other Sagaris is up the inside and having a look, and that's from quite a long way back, coming on to the straights. Sure, once they get into the corners, the Caterham is very quick through there, and sure enough, the Sagaris has to back off a bit and gets himself in trouble across the curves, and that would allow me past, and then it was my turn to have a go at the Caterham. Still got to be a little bit wary with a TVR right behind me. You can see how far the Caterham is ahead of us as we go through these this final chicane. Coming onto the back, onto the front straight. Sorry, the Caterham is quick through the corners, but the thing is, the Sagaris are quick. My Cobra are decent through the turns, and the Caterham just can't make a big enough gap to us. Sure enough, my Cobra flies past the Caterham in a straight line. My Cobra being one of the better cars here for straight line speed, and sure enough, the Sagaris behind also gets himself this time properly alongside on the inside of the corner, and he too gets the position. The Caterham was really, really struggling with that lack of straight line speed, and he would continue to fall a little bit through the field, this time coming under threat from an F2000 car. Now, we've seen that these F2000s are not particularly quick when it comes to a straight line, so you know you're in trouble when one is quicker than you. It gives the Caterham a little bit. I mean, the F2000, I imagine, it was expecting just to slit in the slipstream all the way down this start-finish straight, but it had so much more straight line speed. And these are single-seater, open-wheeled cars. It's not going to be outturned, if you like, by a Caterham. So yeah, the F2000 manages to get the position as well. Further back, and there was a Formula E that was trying to make his way past a Lotus 211 and was having a bit of a tough time with it. These two had quite a battle throughout the race, getting a better run down this short straight up towards the hairpin. The Formula E gets himself to the inside, and there's not a huge amount that the 211 can do about it. But of course, all of these cars here are very, very good handling vehicles. I mean, the Formula E, yes, is technically the better handling of the two cars here, but the Lotus is still very, very good through the turns, so it's close as they come through this final section. There's not likely to be a huge amount of overtaking here. It's very narrow. Formula E, though, had a wheel on the curb on the way in, and that kind of unsettled it all the way through, and now it's too wide as they come around the final turn, and then we begin another race down the start-finish straight. It is very rare that I'd say the Lotus 211 is the quicker car in the straight line, but out of these two, it outdrags the Formula E. But of course, you can never discount these Formula cars with their much better brakes and their much more grip through the corners. It doesn't take long. It's just the drive out of the turn the Formula E gets compared to the Lotus, who's right on the tail of the 211. Both of them are across the curbs, and you don't want to be on the curbs through there. The Formula E is putting pressure on the Lotus, and the Lotus just gets it a bit sideways. Tries to catch the car, and the downside with these light vehicles is they can be a bit twitchy. Lotus goes round in a circle. I'm amazed how the Formula E avoided that crash as well. Just got on the brakes soon enough not to have a really very large accident. At the front, and in the remaining laps of the race, I would catch right up onto the back of first place. We would gradually drop the third place Sagaris, and we headed on to the final lap. I was doing everything I could to find a way past the Sagaris, but a bit of a slide on the way out of the final corner. That was enough of an invitation for me to get my Cobra up the inside, and I could outdrag the Sagaris in a straight line. It wasn't a huge straight line speed difference, but it was enough to let me get past briefly. I promptly outbraked myself. The brakes on the Cobra is not quite as good as you would like. I keep it around the outside, puts me on the inside for the next turn, but I have to take sort of a shallow line through there, a little bit slow off the corner, and the Sagaris manages to get the position back. Again, I can be quick when it comes to a straight bit. It's absolutely bumper to bumper through this very fast chicane. I can be quick down here as well, but I'm not going to outbrake the Sagaris. I can't take a lunge from that far back. I have to be right alongside if I was even going to think about something, because I just don't quite have the brakes of the TVR. And now I'm coming into a little bit of trouble because there's no real place I can overtake through these next few corners. This is just a very long right-hander that I can't do anything about. And again, this next turn, you don't really want to be trying overtakes through here. It's just too narrow. I do manage to make the Sagaris go a bit defensive. He's slow through these chicanes. I can get a better run onto the final corner, sort of just about stick my nose up the inside. Unfortunately for me, the Sagaris just doesn't quite have that rear end grip. Gets a little bit of a slide, and it's enough for me to get my Cobra alongside, and I just beat the Sagaris to the line. That little bit more straight line speed lets my Cobra past. It was a very good final couple of laps. And yeah, I did manage to take victory, while there'd be another two Sagarises on the podium, this time for second and third. Further back, there would be another very close finish. The Lotus 211, recovering from his spin, would be trying to find a way past a Nissan Skyline, while the F2000 car would also be recovering from a spin on his final lap. The Lotus having to go the long way around the Nissan. Nissan not having anywhere near the grip through the corners, but phenomenally quick in a straight line, and now the Lotus is trying to find a way past the F2000 car through this final few corners. It is, as I said, it's very difficult to overtake through here. The F2000 just gets himself in a little bit of trouble on the curb on the inside. That slows down his run onto the straight. The Lotus is around the outside. Here comes the Nissan straight line speed, but it's not enough as the Lotus gets the position only just from the F2000. And then if that start or that finish line had been a little further down the road, that would have been a very different outcome. Our third and final race, we go to the Yas Marina North circuit. Haven't raced versus the community here before. Thought I would give it a go. Again, my Cobra starting from the back row of the grid. Amazingly, everybody make it through turn one cleanly. Things will go a little bit wrong further round. Again, I said about these lightweight cars, they can be a bit twitchy, and some people found that out as an Elise goes round. Crossbow goes around both completely on their own accord in exactly the same manner. Just get a tiny bit of oversteer, you try and correct it, you end up overcorrecting, the car suddenly finds grip and it flings you at a wall, or in that case just a huge runoff area. Yeah, it's easy to do that with some of these cars. The Cobras were pretty good, the Sagarises were pretty good as well with not doing that. But yeah, a lot of these vehicles had them issues. as we exited the hairpin for the first time, it was 4 wide, and I managed to find a gap through the middle of all of it with straight line speed of my Cobra. An F2000 that had started towards the front would quickly plummet through the field down this straight. Everything would just go blasting past it down this very, very long straight. Both of us in the Cobras would outbrake ourselves into the second hairpin for the first time. It's too wide through this final corner. The F2000 car, not realising my Cobra was still there, gives me a little bit of a bump, and I ended up losing a lot of the positions that I had worked so hard for on that opening lap. I'd also end up having a little bit of trouble with some curbs. Curbs were another scary thing for these lightweight cars to be dealing with. Caterham would get a brave manoeuvre around the outside of a Sagres. Not very often go around the outside of the hairpin. F2000 would then spot an opportunity, get his car up the inside, and still the TVR can't quite get himself sort of back onto a normal racing line. He's still being compromised as they come up toward turn 1. Lotus finds himself sort of alongside and will go round the outside as the Sagres bumps across the curb, and the F2000 has got him as well. It's very easy when you have these trains of cars. If you end up, you have to be out of position for one corner where that's being overtaken, or whether you make a slight mistake, and you end up out of position for one turn, cars come past, and it keeps going on and on and on, and you get yourself into a lot of trouble, and the Sagres lost 4 positions in all of that. This race, not a huge amount would happen. For the majority of the midsection, quite a few cars would end up broken through incidences, especially with curbs, and a couple of laggy shunts, I believe. And we have to go to the pits, and everybody spread out, and not much happened for the mid part. My car, I would suffer. I had an accident happen directly in front of me that I couldn't avoid. Brake suspension on one side, get taken out by a back marker, brake suspension on the other side, and I had a very, very bouncy Cobra throughout this race. And me and the Elise were probably the closest car on track for a lot of this race. This was the closest 2 cars were that were racing on the same lap. Yeah, my car was horribly broken in this one, which was a bit of a shame. As you can see, it was so broken the Elise had more straight line speed than my Cobra. Yeah, it wasn't a happy car. Fortunately, though, at the front for the Shelbys, there was another Cobra that would go on to take victory. Caterham had led for quite a while. Unfortunately, he would get himself in trouble with the twitchy nature of the car and go for a spin, allowing the Cobra to take first place. So it would be 2 wins to the Cobra, the Caterham getting second, and I believe it was an F2000 car that would come in third. Yeah, Cobras outdid the TVRs in this versus the community. The only action that I really found going on in this race would go on the final lap over 7th place. A Jaguar D-Type was holding on to 7th, coming under pressure from a KTM crossbow. The Jags were phenomenally quick in a straight line, but not easy to drive when it came to the turns. I don't think they have big enough tyres on them, basically. They do like to slide around. The KTM had got the position, but now we're on a very long straight, and the Jag is very, very fast. It's just gone. Flies past the KTM. And you've got to make sure, though, you can get the Jaguar. So look at the size of the gap the D-Type has to the vehicle behind. He does manage to get the car slowed down into the corner. The problem is putting the power down out the other side. The Jaguar is really struggling, sliding, and he hits the curb on the inside, and that's all it takes. The Jag is out too wide, the KTM gets past, and we have a spinning D-Type. Yeah, the D-Types were not the easiest car. They're probably the quickest cars in a straight line. They're quicker than my Cobras, but they were not the easiest cars in the world to drive. But yeah, that was literally about the only interesting battle going on in this third race. It did get very spread out with various reasons. Anyway, that is it for this week's FailRace versus the community. The next one shall be on Thursday, the 23rd of April. We're going to be on Forza Horizon 2, doing some of the playground games using B-class cars. We're not going to be going to Storm Island. It's only going to be on the main game. If you want to sign up and take part in that, then you can go to our forums. There will be a link in the description. Find the FailRace versus the community section, and the sign-up thread will be in there. But that is it from me, so thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.